The first time I saw Recruit Vex throw away her weapon, I thought she had finally lost what little sanity humans pretend to possess. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Krell'thar, a Valorian combat instructor with 43 cycles of military experience, 12 decorations for tactical excellence, and absolutely zero patience for the bizarre species that calls itself humanity. My exoskeleton gleams with the purple-black sheen of a seasoned warrior. My forearms have trained literally thousands of soldiers from across the galaxy. And my reputation? Well, let us just say that recruits from 17 different species have wept in my presence. But humans? Humans do not weep. They laugh. They laugh at things that should terrify them, crack jokes when they should be cowering, and apparently, they throw away perfectly functional plasma rifles during live fire exercises. Recruit Vex. My translator implant nearly sparked from the volume I forced through it. Explain to me, using whatever primitive logic your species pretends to employ, why your standard issue KX-7000 plasma rifle is currently tumbling through the air toward the recycling pit. Vex, a female human with the most ridiculous cropped hair, the color of burnt copper, and a grin that suggested she found my rage entertaining, simply shrugged. One shoulder. Not even both shoulders. The disrespect! It jammed, sir, she said, her voice carrying that peculiar human quality I had learned to identify as barely contained amusement. Third time today. The cooling mechanism has a design flaw when operating in humid environments above 72%. The thermal regulator cannot compensate, which causes a cascade failure in the plasma chamber. I blinked all three of my eyes in sequence, a Valorian expression of profound confusion. That rifle has been tested in environments ranging from volcanic hellscapes to frozen methane moons. It does not jam. With respect, sir, yes it does. Watch. She walked over to another recruit, a Thorian male named Breck, who had been observing this exchange with growing horror and borrowed his rifle. She fired 3 precise shots at the distant targets, perfect grouping. Then she adjusted something on the side panel, fired again, and the weapon emitted a sad whirring sound before going dark. See? The synchronization between the power cell and the firing mechanism drops below operational threshold when the ambient moisture interferes with the connection nodes. Basic engineering oversight. I stared at her. Around us, the other 47 recruits in the training cohort had stopped their exercises to witness what they clearly assumed would be my inevitable destruction of this impudent human. You have been in this training program for 6 rotations, I said slowly, my voice dropping to that dangerous quiet that made most species instinctively back away. 6 rotations. And you believe you understand the mechanics of Galactic Alliance military hardware better than the engineers who designed it? Oh, absolutely not, sir. Vex's grin widened. I am sure they are brilliant. I am also sure they never actually field-tested these in the kind of swamp planets where humans evolved. Different perspective, you know. We notice things. Before I could formulate a response that would not violate 16 different military protocols regarding the treatment of recruits, she had jogged over to the recycling pit, retrieved her discarded rifle, and was walking toward the equipment shed with what humans call determination. I followed. Obviously, I was not curious. I was supervising. There is a difference. The equipment shed smelled of lubricant, ozone, and that peculiar scent humans produce when they concentrate. Vex had already disassembled her rifle across one of the workbenches, components spread out with surprising precision. What exactly do you think you are doing? I demanded. Fixing it, she replied, without looking up. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, selecting tools from the rack. I need about 40 minutes, maybe an hour if I fabricate a custom heatsink. You cannot modify Alliance military equipment. That is a court-martial offense. Only if I damage it permanently or compromise its function. She glanced up. And there was that infuriating smile again. Regulation 7 to 442, subsection 3. I looked it up. If the modifications improve performance and maintain safety standards, they are classified as field adaptations and subject to review, but not immediate penalty. Besides, you really want me going into combat with a weapon that fails every third engagement? She had me there. Curse these humans and their obsession with finding loopholes in everything. I crossed my upper arms while my lower arms braced against the bench. Fine. You have 1 standard hour. If that weapon is not operational and performing to specification, you will spend the next rotation scrubbing the waste reclamation systems. With a manual, brush. On the Thorian barracks level. Her face did something complicated. I had learned that humans express horror not through sensible displays of chromatophore changes or pheromone releases, but through subtle movements of their facial muscles. This particular expression suggested I had threatened her with something genuinely unpleasant. Good. Deal, she said, and turned back to her work. I should have left. I had 46 other recruits to terrorize. But something made me stay, watching as her fingers moved through the rifle's internal mechanisms with surprising delicacy. She muttered to herself as she worked, a habit I had noticed many humans shared when concentrating. Okay, so if I reroute the secondary coolant line here and add a buffer chamber using this panel from the spare parts bin. Oh, that is clever. That is actually very clever. They designed redundancy into the power coupling, but never activated it because it would require 0.02 seconds longer to charge. Each shot. Nobody would notice 0.02 seconds, but it would completely eliminate the moisture problem. She was not talking to me. She was having a conversation with the rifle itself, as if the inanimate object would respond with engineering insights. Humans are insane, I muttered in my native tongue, which my translator deliberately did not broadcast. Probably, Vex responded in flawless Valorian, not looking up from her work. But we are very good at fixing things that other people insist are not broken. I nearly fell over. You speak Valorian? A bit. I learned from the linguistics database. Your language has this beautiful efficiency in technical terminology. Makes sense for a species that values precision. She held up a component to the light, examining it critically. Although your profanity is surprisingly limited. Only 17 distinct expressions of frustration? Humans have at least 300, and that is just in standard English. We do not need 300 ways to express frustration because we do not encounter situations that require such linguistic diversity. Right, because you have never tried to assemble furniture with incomplete instructions or dealt with a software update that breaks everything it was supposed to fix. I had no response to that, mainly because I had no idea what she was talking about. 37 minutes later, Vex reassembled the rifle. It looked identical to its original configuration, with one exception, a small heat dispersal unit she had fabricated from spare parts. Now sat flush against the cooling chamber, nearly invisible, unless you knew to look for it. Want to test it? She asked, that dangerous enthusiasm creeping back into her voice. We returned to the range. By this point, the other recruits had given up pretending to train and were openly watching. Even Sergeant Threx, my Drachnian assistant instructor, had wandered over to observe. Vex loaded a fresh power cell, checked the charge, and fired. 1 shot. 2. 3. She emptied the entire cell, 60 shots in rapid succession. The kind of sustained fire that should have triggered the thermal shutdown she had described. The rifle performed flawlessly. Not a single misfire, not a hint of the jamming problem. Humidity is currently 78%, she announced cheerfully, checking her wrist display. Well above the failure threshold. But look, no cascade failure, no thermal regulation problems, and the grouping actually improved because the barrel temperature stays more consistent. I walked to the target. Every shot, all 60 of them, had landed within the designated kill zone. Not just adequate. Perfect. Explain how you knew to do this, I demanded, my pride wrestling with something that felt uncomfortably like respect. Back home, on Earth, I grew up in a place called the Dakota Scrapyards. When you are poor, and the nearest proper gun shop is 300 kilometers away, you learn to fix things with whatever you have available. My grandfather taught me that every tool is just material waiting to be improved, and every problem is just a puzzle waiting for the right perspective. She slung the rifle over her shoulder with casual confidence. Also, I might have accidentally broken my first training rifle on day 2 and spent all night fixing it before anyone noticed. That was when I figured out the moisture issue. Fear is a great motivator for technical innovation. A laugh erupted from somewhere in the crowd of recruits. Then another. Within seconds, the entire cohort was making that bizarre barking sound humans call laughter. And even some of the other species were joining in with their own expressions of amusement. "Silence!" I roared, but even I could hear the lack of conviction in my voice. Vex just stood there, grinning like she had not just violated a dozen protocols and somehow made it look like innovation rather than insubordination. "Tell me, Recruit Vex," I said, an idea forming in my tactical mind. "You believe you can improve upon Galactic Alliance weapon design using scrap metal and audacity. Is that correct?" "I would not phrase it exactly like that, sir, but yes. Essentially." "Excellent." I allowed myself a small smile, which on a Valorian face resembles a threat display. "Then you will have no problem with a small challenge I have in mind." Her eyes narrowed. Humans have very expressive eyes, and hers currently suggested suspicion mixed with interest. "What kind of challenge?" "Tomorrow, at dawn, you and I will have a marksmanship competition. I will use a standard KX-7000. You will use whatever weapon you can construct, from scratch, using only materials from the scrap yard behind the munitions depot. You have until dawn to build it. If you outscore me, I will personally recommend your rifle modifications to Alliance Command. If I win, you will stop questioning every single protocol I teach for the remainder of your training." The silence that followed was profound. Every recruit, every instructor, every passing maintenance drone seemed to freeze in anticipation. Vex's grin transformed into something feral. "You have got yourself a deal, sir." We shook on it, her small human hand disappearing into my massive lower right palm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Dismissed!" I bellowed, and the recruits scattered like startled prey animals. As Vex jogged toward the barracks, presumably to plan her evening of weapons construction, Sergeant Threx approached me with all 6 of his eyes blinking in concern. "Commander Krell'thar," he said in his hissing Dracnian accent, "with respect, you have just challenged a human to a competition that plays directly to their species' primary strength. Improvisation under pressure, using inadequate resources." "I am aware," I replied. "And you believe you will win?" I watched Vex's retreating form, her confident stride, that ridiculous copper hair catching the light of our training complex's artificial sun. "Honestly, Threx? I have no idea. But I suspect that regardless of who wins, we are about to learn something interesting about human ingenuity." "That is what concerns me," Threx muttered. "The last time humans taught us something interesting, we ended up having to revise 47 different tactical manuals." He was not wrong. But as I returned to my office to prepare for the next day's inevitable chaos, I found myself actually looking forward to dawn for the first time in rotations. Humans. They are absolutely insufferable, but they are never, ever boring. That night, I did not sleep. To be fair, Valorians only require sleep every 3rd cycle, so this was not unusual. What was unusual was that I spent those hours reviewing everything I knew about human psychology, their historical relationship with weapons technology, and their frankly disturbing tendency to treat impossible challenges as interesting puzzles. At approximately 0300 hours, I received a communication ping from the depot security system. Someone had accessed the scrapyard. I pulled up the surveillance feed and found exactly what I expected. Recruit Vex, illuminated by a portable worklight, sorting through piles of discarded components with the focus of a Zentari gem cutter. She was not alone. 3 other human recruits had joined her, along with Breck, the Thorian, whose rifle she had borrowed earlier. They were passing her tools, holding components, and generally assisting in what appeared to be a highly organized scavenging operation. I should have stopped them. Technically, the challenge was supposed to be individual. But then Vex said something that made the others laugh, that peculiar human bonding ritual, and I found myself simply watching instead. Humans do this, I had learned. They turn everything into a communal activity. Where other species might hoard knowledge or guard techniques, humans share them freely, collaborate automatically, and seem to become more capable in regard. Groups, rather than less. It is inefficient. It is chaotic. It is also remarkably effective. By 0500 hours, just as our planet's sun began its climb above the horizon, I made my way to the designated firing range. I carried my personal KX-7000, a weapon I had used for 11 cycles, customized legally within regulations, and maintained with obsessive precision. I knew its quirks, its perfect balance, the exact pressure required for optimal trigger response. I was confident. Perhaps too confident. The other instructors had somehow gotten word of the challenge. Sergeant Threx was present, along with Instructor Velkara from Tactical Strategy, Commander Prex from the Flight Corps, and at least 20 other staff members who really should have been doing something more productive with their morning. The recruits arrived in a mass, all 47 of them, chattering with that energy humans seem to radiate when they are excited about something. They formed a loose semicircle around the range, and I noticed that more than a few of them had placed what humans call bets on the outcome. Then Vex arrived, and conversation stopped. She carried her creation cradled in both arms, like something precious. At first glance, it looked like someone had taken several different weapons, melted them together, and hoped for the best. The stock appeared to be from a decommissioned Kentari slug thrower. The barrel was clearly repurposed from an old plasma rifle, possibly 2 generations obsolete. The firing mechanism looked handmade, and the scope was held in place with what I really hoped was reinforced bonding wire, and not just optimism. It was ugly. It was asymmetrical. It was held together with at least 4 different types of fasteners. It was also clearly functional, and that worried me more than I cared to admit. "That," I said carefully, "is your weapon?" "I call her Frankenstein," Vex announced proudly. "After an old human story about building something amazing from discarded plant pieces. She is not pretty, but she will shoot straight. Probably. Probably. Well, I have not actually test-fired her yet. Figured I would save that for the actual competition. More dramatic that way." Sergeant Threx made a sound that his species produces when experiencing second-hand embarrassment. Several of the watching instructors looked like they were reconsidering their morning schedules. "Recruit Vex?" I said slowly. "You are telling me that you built a weapon from literal garbage, have not tested it, and plan to compete against a trained marksman using equipment that might explode in your hands? When you say it like that, it sounds irresponsible." She checked something on the side of her weapon, nodded to herself. "But yes, that is accurate. Shall we begin?" What else could I do? I had issued the challenge. Backing out now would cost me more respect than losing ever could. "Standard competition rules," I announced to the assembled crowd. 5 rounds, targets at 50 meters, 100 meters, and 200 meters. Highest combined score wins. Recruit Vex, as the challenger, you will shoot first. She stepped up to the firing line, shouldering her cobbled-together rifle with practiced ease. The weapon looked comically large against her smaller human frame, but her stance was solid, her breathing controlled. She fired. The sound was wrong. Every proper plasma rifle makes a clean, high-pitched whine when discharging. Vex's weapon produced something closer to a cough, a wheeze, and a very slight smell of burning rubber. The target at 50 meters exploded in a shower of sparks. Dead center. Perfect hit. Huh, Vex said conversationally. She pulls slightly left. Good to know. She adjusted her aim and fired 4 more times. 4 more perfect hits, each one compensating for whatever mysterious ballistic quirk her Frankenstein rifle possessed. Then she stepped back, grinning. Your turn, sir. I took my position, raised my reliable, tested, standard-issue weapon, and fired my 5 rounds with the precision that comes from decades of training. All 5 hits, all center mass. Exactly as expected. We moved to the 100-meter targets. Then 200. The pattern continued. Vex's weapon made increasingly concerning noises, occasionally emitted small puffs of smoke, and at one point actually sparked in a way that made her mutter something about needing better insulation next time. But every single shot landed true. When the smoke cleared, literally, the scores were tallied. Mine were perfect, precisely what any instructor would expect from someone with my experience. Vex's scores were also perfect, identical to mine, shot for shot. A tie, announced Sergeant Threx, his voice carrying a mix of relief and disappointment, which means both competitors have proven their point, and we can all return to normal training without further drama. Not quite, Vex said. She was checking her rifle again, that expression on her face that I had learned to identify as dangerous creativity. We never established what happens in case of a tie, and I am pretty sure ties are boring. So how about this? 1 final shot. Moving target. 300 meters. Single shot. Whoever gets closer to center wins. This was absurd. 300 meters with a moving target required computational assistance, environmental compensation, and extremely stable weapon platforms. Her rifle looked like it might fall apart if she sneezed. Agreed, I said, because apparently I had lost all common sense. The range technician activated the mobile target system, a holographic projection that would move in randomized patterns at 300 meters. Difficult, but within the capabilities of my weapon's targeting computer, I fired first this time. The shot was good, striking just 2 centimeters right of center. Not perfect, but respectable given the conditions. Vex studied the moving target for what felt like an extremely long time. She made minor adjustments to her scope, tilted her head in that curious way humans do when calculating something, and then did something that made my blood run cold. She closed her eyes. "What are you doing?" I hissed. "Listening," she replied calmly. "Your rifle gives you computer assistance. Mine has me. And right now, I can hear the wind patterns, calculate the target's velocity from the sound of its movement through air, and estimate the gravitational drop based on the weight of my projectile. Humans might not have your species' strength or the Draconian speed, but we are really, really good at pattern recognition and spatial reasoning." She opened her eyes and fired in one smooth motion. The target's hologram flickered and reset. The computer calculated the hit location. Perfect center. Absolutely. Impossibly. Perfectly center. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the cooling systems in the nearby buildings. Then the recruits erupted. Humans cheering, Thorians bellowing approval, even the normally stoic Kentari were making appreciative clicking sounds. The instructors looked like they were witnessing something that would require filing extremely complicated reports. Vex lowered her rifle, that infuriating smile back on her face. "Good match, sir. Your weapon is clearly superior in every technical specification. But I think I might have proved that sometimes the person matters more than the equipment. I should have been furious. I should have been humiliated. I should have been planning creative punishments within the boundaries of military law. Instead, I started laughing. Deep, resonant Valorian laughter that made my exoskeleton vibrate, and my translator struggled to find appropriate context. "Recruit Vex," I said, when I could finally speak again. "You are either the most brilliant soldier I have ever trained, or the most insufferable. Possibly both." "I prefer to think I am efficiently insufferable, sir. Your rifle modifications will be reviewed by Alliance Command with my full endorsement. Your training scores will reflect your exceptional marksmanship, and you will still spend tomorrow scrubbing the waste reclamation systems because you let your weapon spark during a live fire exercise, and that is a safety violation regardless of outcome." Her smile did not falter. "Worth it." As the crowd dispersed and the morning training schedule attempted to reassert itself, I found myself looking at the cobbled-together rifle Vex had named Frankenstein. It was objectively terrible, held together by hope and human stubbornness. Yet, it had performed flawlessly when it mattered. Much like humans themselves, I supposed. "Commander?" Vex had returned to collect her weapon. "Thank you for the challenge. I learned a lot." "You won." "I learned that you gave me a real chance to prove myself, even though you could have just pulled rank and shut me down. That matters. It means you care more about what works than what should work, according to tradition. That is rare, especially for senior instructors." She saluted properly, her posture respectful despite her earlier irreverence, and walked away carrying her ridiculous rifle like a trophy. Sergeant Threx approached, all 6 eyes focused on me with uncomfortable intensity. "You are going to have her redesign standard infantry weapons within 2 cycles, are you not?" "Probably," I admitted. "Someone needs to figure out why our equipment fails in conditions that humans apparently consider normal. Might as well be the human who can build functional weapons from recycling bins. The other instructors are going to hate you." "The other instructors?" I said, watching Vex rejoin her fellow recruits who were clapping her on the back with enthusiasm, can file complaints in triplicate. "Meanwhile, I am going to ensure we stop losing soldiers to equipment failures that a human recruit solved in one night using scrap metal and audacity." That evening, I filed my report recommending Vex's promotion to advanced training ahead of schedule. I also filed a requisition for her to receive proper engineering equipment, a lab space, and authorization to examine Alliance weapon systems for potential improvements. 3 rotations later, I received responses. Alliance Command approved everything, with a note that they were very interested in this human approach to equipment modification. They also sent 6 additional human recruits specifically to train under my supervision, citing my apparent ability to harness their chaotic innovation. I stared at the orders for a long time, listening to Vex's laughter echoing from the training yard where she was teaching Breck and the others about creative problem-solving using inadequate resources. Humans, they throw away perfectly functional rifles, build new ones from garbage, outscore trained instructors using weapons held together with wishful thinking, and somehow make you grateful for the privilege of watching them work. I would not trade them for anything. Well, maybe for a larger supply of sedatives and a handbook on managing creative chaos. But other than that, they are absolutely perfect, in their own, utterly insufferable way. 3 months after the infamous rifle incident, my life had become significantly more complicated, and I blamed humans entirely for this development. Recruit Vex, who I had mistakenly believed would be transferred to advanced engineering programs and thus removed from my daily existence, had instead been assigned as my permanent technical advisor. Alliance Command, in their infinite questionable wisdom, decided that having a human who could rebuild weapons from scrap metal while making sarcastic observations would improve our entire training regiment. They were correct, which only made it more annoying. "Commander Krell'thar, we have a problem," Vex announced, bursting into my office without knocking. Again. I had explained proper protocol 17 times. She remembered perfectly. She simply chose to ignore it. Define problem, I said, not looking up from the tactical assessment reports that had been making my day miserable. If this is about the ammunition requisition forms again, I already approved your experimental rounds despite every regulation suggesting I should not. Oh, those came through. Excellent. No, this is different. She dropped a data tablet on my desk with enough force to make me flinch. We have 6 new human recruits arriving tomorrow, right? Yes. Command believes your species benefits from training in larger groups. Something about pack bonding and collaborative learning. Sure, humans are social. That tracks. But look at their files. I picked up the tablet, scanning through the personnel records. Marcus Liu, former Earth military, explosives expert. Keiko Tanaka, competitive shooter with 42 championship titles. Dmitry Volkov, survival specialist from Siberian territories. Amara Okonkwo, mechanical engineering prodigy. James Parker, tactical analysis background. And Zara Khalid, who apparently had 3 different advanced degrees and spoke 11 languages. These are exceptional candidates, I said slowly. I fail to see the problem. The problem is that Command sent me their psychological profiles under separate encryption. They are all brilliant, highly skilled, and according to these assessments, they have what human military calls authority issues. They question orders, they improvise constantly, they challenge doctrine, and they absolutely refuse to accept traditional training methods. I stared at her. So, Command has sent me 6 versions of you. Worse, they sent you 6 people who make me look cooperative and easy to manage. That should not be possible. And yet, she spread her hands dramatically. Here we are. I think Command is testing something. They want to see if your training methods can handle an entire unit of creative troublemakers, or if we will collectively drive you to resign and join a monastery. Valorians do not have monasteries. You should consider starting one. Quiet contemplation, no humans, probably very peaceful. I leaned back in my chair, all 4 arms crossed in what Vex had learned to recognize as my deep thinking posture. Why are you telling me this? You could have let me walk into this situation unprepared. Her expression shifted, becoming surprisingly serious. Because you gave me a fair chance when you could have just crushed my ideas and forced conformity. Because you actually listen when someone has a better solution, even if it comes from a recruit. And because if this goes badly, it will not just reflect on you. It will affect how Command views all human innovation in military settings. We have a chance to prove that thinking differently is an asset, not a liability. But only if we handle this correctly. For approximately the 14th time since meeting this infuriating human, I found myself respecting her tactical assessment while simultaneously wishing she would just follow simple instructions occasionally. What do you suggest? I asked. First, we need to establish that you are in command, but that command does not mean mindless obedience. Second, we give them a challenge that requires exactly the kind of creative problem-solving they are good at, but within a framework that proves discipline and innovation can coexist. And third, we make sure the other instructors see this as expanding capability, not undermining tradition. You have been reading military philosophy texts again. Maybe. Also, I have been talking to Sergeant Threx about Drachnian pack dynamics. Turns out, your assistant instructor has some interesting theories about channeling aggressive energy into productive outcomes. Who knew lizard people were so insightful about human psychology? Threx is going to love hearing you call him a lizard person. He already heard. Me. He thinks it is hilarious. She grinned. So, are we doing this? Operation Make Chaos Productive? That is a terrible operation name. All the best operations have terrible names. Builds character. Against every instinct developed over 43 cycles of military service, I agreed. The next morning, I stood on the landing platform as the transport shuttle descended through our atmosphere, carrying 6 humans who would either revolutionize our training program or give me a stress disorder. Possibly both. Vex stood beside me, wearing her formal uniform for once, instead of the modified version she preferred that had 17 unauthorized pockets. Sergeant Threx lurked behind us, all 6 eyes fixed on the shuttle, with the intensity of a predator watching potentially dangerous prey. "Remember the plan," Vex muttered. "Confidence, clear expectations, immediate challenge. Show them you respect competence but demand excellence. I have been training soldiers since before you were born. Yes, but you have never trained this many humans at once. Different psychology. Trust me." The shuttle doors opened, and 6 humans emerged, each carrying standard deployment bags and expressions ranging from curious to openly skeptical. Liu was compact, muscular, with calculating eyes that immediately scanned our facility's defensive positions. Tanaka moved with the fluid grace of someone comfortable with their body as a precision instrument. Volkov looked like he could survive a nuclear winter armed with only a sharp rock and determination. Okonkwo was studying our equipment with the focused intensity of an engineer spotting inefficiencies. Parker seemed to be analyzing sightlines and tactical positions. Khalid watched everything with the serene expression of someone fluent in reading subtext across cultures. "Recruits," I said, my translator projecting my voice with appropriate authority. "Welcome to Training Complex 7. I am Commander Krell'thar, your primary close instructor. This is Technical Advisor Vex and Sergeant Threx. You have been selected for this program because Alliance Command believes you possess valuable skills. I believe you possess undisciplined chaos that might someday become valuable if properly directed. You will prove one of us correct over the next 6 rotations." Liu raised a hand. "Permission to speak, Commander?" "Granted. With respect, sir, our files indicate we are all experienced in our fields. Is this going to be standard basic training? Or are we here for something specific?" Direct challenge to authority, delivered politely. Exactly as Vex predicted. "Something specific," I replied. "Advisor Vex, please explain." Vex stepped forward. "You 6 were chosen because you think sideways. You see problems that others miss, and solutions that are not in the manual. Command wants to know if that approach can be taught systematically, or if it is just chaotic luck. We are going to find out. But here is the critical part. Innovation without discipline is just noise. You will learn to channel your creativity into frameworks that make you more effective, not just more unpredictable." "And if we disagree with the frameworks?" Tanaka asked, her voice carrying a musical quality that somehow made the challenge sound polite. "Then you will articulate exactly why the framework fails, propose a better alternative with supporting evidence, and convince me through demonstration rather than argument," I said. "I do not demand blind obedience. I demand that you earn your deviations from protocol by proving they produce superior results." Advisor Vex threw away a rifle and built a better one from scrap. That earned her the right to question weapon design. "What will you do to earn your authority to challenge doctrine?" Silence. The 6 new recruits exchanged glances, a rapid nonverbal communication that humans excel at. "Understood, Commander," Okonkwo said finally. "When do we start?" "Immediately." "Your quarters are ready? Your equipment is waiting, and your first exercise begins in 2 hours. I suggest you prepare." As they filed off toward the barracks, following Threx, who had volunteered to handle orientation, Parker hesitated. "Commander? One question." "Yes?" "That rifle Advisor Vex built. Did it really work?" I glanced at Vex, who was trying very hard not to smile. "It outperformed my personal weapon in live fire competition." She named it Frankenstein. "It was held together with recycled components and optimism, and it somehow achieved perfect accuracy. Does that answer your question?" Parker's face split into a wide grin. "Yes, sir. This is going to be interesting." After they left, Vex turned to me. "That went well. You established authority while acknowledging their capabilities. Very smooth. Do not patronize your commanding officer. Would not dream of it, sir. So, what is this first exercise you mentioned? Because I do not remember us actually planning specific details. We did not. I assumed you would have something appropriately challenging and mildly dangerous prepared. Oh, I have ideas. So many ideas. Thrax might have some concerns about the danger levels, but when has that ever stopped us? Never. Which is becoming a disturbing pattern. 2 hours later, the 7 human recruits, Vex included, stood in the simulation chamber while I explained their first real test. This facility has a problem, I began, activating the holographic display. The water reclamation system for Training Complex 7 serves 2,000 personnel. It was designed by Kentari engineers 30 cycles ago and has functioned adequately since installation. However, adequately is not acceptable. The system wastes 17% of processed water through inefficient recycling, takes 43% longer than theoretical optimal performance to complete filtration cycles, and requires maintenance twice as frequently as comparable systems at other facilities. Liu studied the JOPT schematics I had projected. You want us to redesign a water system? That seems pretty far from combat training. Soldiers in the field require water. Supply lines fail. Equipment breaks. Environments prove hostile. A squad that can improvise resource management survives. A squad that waits for proper supply channels dies of dehydration while filing requisition forms. You have 4 days to analyze the current system, identify failures, design improvements, and implement at least one significant upgrade using available materials and a budget of exactly 0 credits. 0 budget? Khalid asked. Combat situations rarely include convenient access to military funding. You will use what is available, trade favors if necessary, improvise solutions, and prove that human creativity can solve practical problems, not just theoretical ones. Volkov was already studying the maintenance access points on the schematic. What if we make things worse? Then you will personally draw and carry water from the emergency reserves for 2,000 personnel until repairs are completed. I estimate that would take approximately 9 days of continuous labor. Motivation through terror, Tanaka observed. Effective. Motivation through consequences, I corrected. Welcome to military problem solving. Begin. What followed over the next 4 days was a masterclass in controlled chaos that would have given most instructors significant health complications. The humans immediately split into pairs. Liu and Parker handled system analysis, mapping water flow and identifying bottlenecks. Tanaka and Okonkwo focused on mechanical components, examining pumps and valves for inefficiencies. Volkov and Khalid took on resource acquisition, which apparently meant negotiating with maintenance staff, kitchen personnel, and even the recycling depot for materials. Vex floated between groups, offering suggestions, challenging assumptions, and occasionally preventing ideas that would have definitely resulted in catastrophic flooding. I observed, intervened only when safety became questionable, and tried not to be impressed. On day 2, Liu approached me during evening meal. Commander, we found something interesting. The system inefficiency is not from design flaws. It is from maintenance modifications. Explain. Over 30 cycles, different maintenance crews have made small changes to accommodate easier repairs. Each change made sense individually, but collectively, they reduced system performance by routing water through longer paths. The Kentari engineers designed something elegant. Subsequent maintenance made it functional but clumsy. Can you fix it? We think so, but it requires accessing the primary junction during low usage hours, which means overnight when most personnel are sleeping. We would need authorization for that. He was asking permission properly, following protocol, demonstrating that he understood chain of command while pursuing his objective. Exactly. What Vex had said, they needed to learn. Authorized. Coordinate with Sergeant Threx. Take safety precautions. Do not flood my facility. Understood, sir. On day 3, I found Okonkwo in the machine shop at 0200 hours, fabricating custom valve components using the precision equipment normally reserved for weapon maintenance. Should you not be sleeping? I asked. She did not look up from her work. Should you not be commanding from your office instead of checking on recruits at random hours? I asked first. Fair point. She made a final adjustment and inspected the component under magnification. I am making replacement valves that maintain the original Kentari design specifications, but use modern materials that resist corrosion better. The originals were built for Kentari atmospheric conditions. They degrade faster in our oxygen-rich environment. This should extend maintenance intervals by 40%. That was not part of the assignment. The assignment was to improve the system using available resources. If I make parts that last longer, future classes will not have to deal with this problem again. That seems like an improvement. I could not argue with that logic. On day 4, they presented their solution. The 7 humans stood before me, Sergeant Threx, and 3 other instructors who had heard about this exercise and wanted to witness either success or spectacular failure. Vex served as spokesperson. We identified 3 primary inefficiency sources. First, maintenance modifications had created unnecessarily complex water routing. We simplified the flow paths back to something closer to original design, reducing travel distance by 22%. Parker activated a hologram showing before and after schematics. Second, the filtration timing was based on original Kentari calculations for their atmosphere. We adjusted the cycle duration for our actual atmospheric composition, cutting processing time by 18% without compromising water purity. Okonkwo held up several small components. Third, we replaced 12 critical valves with corrosion-resistant versions manufactured from recycled equipment parts. This should reduce maintenance frequency by approximately 40%, based on material stress testing. Did you test these modifications? Threx asked, his skepticism evident. We implemented them fully last night, Liu said calmly. The system has been running for 19 hours. All performance metrics show improvement, matching our predictions. Water output increased by 24%, energy consumption dropped by 11%, and quality monitoring indicates no degradation in purification standards. Silence. I checked my personal data tablet, pulling up real-time facility systems monitoring. Everything Liu claimed was accurate. You modified a critical facility system without explicit approval for implementation? Instructor Velkara asked, her voice sharp. We had approval to improve the system, Tanaka replied. If that was a requirement, it should have been stated explicitly in the mission parameters. She was correct. I had not specified implementation approval. I had assumed they would present theoretical solutions, not execute them directly. Vex caught my eye, that familiar grin suggesting she had known exactly what they would do. Recruits, I said slowly. You took initiative that could have resulted in disaster if your calculations were wrong. You interpreted your orders to maximize outcome rather than minimize risk. You collaborated effectively across different specializations. And you delivered measurable results that improve this facility for every person stationed here. They waited, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Excellent work. You passed this exercise with distinction. You also proved that human innovation can function within military frameworks when given clear objectives and appropriate freedom to execute. Advisor Vex, please coordinate with facility maintenance to document these modifications for implementation at other complexes. The relief was visible. Parker actually slumped slightly. Volkov grinned. Khalid nodded with satisfaction. However, I continued, you will also write detailed reports explaining every decision, every risk assessment, and every backup plan you prepared in case your modifications failed. Due in 2 days. If I find gaps in your reasoning or safety protocols you overlooked, we will have extensive discussions about risk management. Understood, Commander, they chorused. After dismissal, Velkara approached me. You are encouraging them to take unauthorized action. I am encouraging them to take calculated risks within defined parameters. There is a difference. Is there? Because from my perspective, you just rewarded insubordination. They followed their orders. Precisely. I said, improve the system. I did not say present theoretical improvements for approval. They delivered results that benefit everyone. That is not insubordination. That is exactly the kind of initiative we should want in soldiers who might face unpredictable combat situations. Velkara made a non-committal sound and left. Threx remained, watching me with what I had learned to interpret as his concerned expression. You are changing training doctrine, he observed. I am adapting training doctrine to accommodate species that think differently. Humans will not become Valorians, or Drachnians, or Centauri. Forcing them into frameworks designed for other species wastes their potential. Better to create frameworks that channel their strengths productively. Command will either promote you or court-martial you for this. Probably both, possibly simultaneously. 3 rotations later, Alliance Command sent inspection teams to observe our modified training program. They watched. Humans redesign equipment, question tactical assumptions, and collaborate in chaotic but effective patterns. They reviewed performance metrics showing improved problem-solving scores, faster adaptation to unexpected situations, and higher satisfaction ratings from human recruits. Then they assigned me 40 more human recruits and promoted me to regional training coordinator with a mandate to expand the program. Vex found this hilarious. You have gone from wanting to scrub humans out of your training complex to being the Galactic Alliance's official expert on human military integration, she said, reviewing the promotion orders. That has to qualify as character growth. That qualifies as command lacking anyone else willing to deal with your species, I replied. Same thing. She scrolled through the new recruit files. Oh, this is going to be fun. We have got former pirates, reformed hackers, wilderness survival experts, and someone whose previous job was professional storm chaser. I am pretty sure Command is just sending us everyone they do not know what to do with. That is a terrifying assessment, but probably accurate. She looked up, her expression turning serious. Thank you, Commander, for taking a chance on methods that must seem strange to you, for letting us prove that different can mean better, not just difficult. You are still insufferable. Absolutely. But now, I am officially sanctioned insufferable. That is progress. The next morning, I stood on the landing platform again, watching another transport shuttle descend, carrying more humans who would challenge every assumption I held about military training. Behind me, my original 7 human recruits were preparing training scenarios for the newcomers, already collaborating to ensure this next group would succeed. Sergeant Threx approached, carrying a data tablet. The facility water system modifications have been requested by 14 other training complexes. Maintenance Command wants to standardize the improvements across all Alliance facilities. Excellent. They also want to know if we have any other infrastructure improvements pending. Probably. Check with the humans. They always have ideas. That is what concerns me. But Threx was making that hissing sound that indicated Drachnian amusement. Although I admit, the facility does function better now, even if the methods were unorthodox. The shuttle landed. The doors opened. 20 more humans emerged, looking around with that characteristic mixture of curiosity and barely contained energy. I stepped forward, all 4 arms crossed in formal greeting posture. Welcome to Training Complex 7, I announced. I am Commander Krell'thar. You are here because someone believes humans can revolutionize military thinking through creative problem-solving. I am here to ensure that creativity does not devolve into chaos. We will determine together whether innovation and discipline can coexist, or if this entire experiment collapses into amusing disaster. One of the new recruits, a female with vibrant blue hair that surely violated a dozen appearance regulations, raised her hand. Where? Question, Commander? Yes? What happened to the last group that went through this program? I glanced back at Vex and her team, who were watching with obvious anticipation. They redesigned our water system, improved facility efficiency by 24%, and are now designing training curriculum for you. Any other questions? Blue Hair grinned. No, sir. I think we are going to like it here. As I led them toward orientation, I heard Threx mutter behind me, "We are either building the most effective training program in Alliance history, or creating the foundation for our eventual organizational collapse. Cannot it be both?" I replied. That is not reassuring, Commander. Welcome to working with humans, Sergeant. Nothing about this is reassuring, but I suspect we are going to accomplish remarkable things. Anyway, and we did. Over the following cycles, our facility became known throughout Alliance Command as both the most effective and most unorthodox training complex in operation. Humans threw away standard rifles and built better ones from scrap. They redesigned infrastructure using recycled components. They questioned tactical doctrine and proved alternatives through demonstration. They turned every limitation into a challenge and every challenge into an opportunity. They were loud, chaotic, irreverent, and absolutely brilliant. They were also mine to train, which meant I had become personally invested in ensuring they succeeded not despite their differences, but because of them. Humans. They will redesign your facility, question your assumptions, outscore you using weapons held together with optimism, and somehow make you grateful for the privilege of watching them work. And when some stuffy Alliance inspector visits your complex asking why everything runs differently here, you can smile and reply, "Because humans taught me that the best solutions often come from the least expected places, including recycling bins." That inspector will file a report suggesting you have gone native. Command will promote you anyway. And somewhere, a human recruit will be taking apart another piece of standard equipment to make it better. Just because that is what humans do. They see problems where others see perfection. They find solutions where others see limitations. They laugh at danger, collaborate instinctively, and refuse to accept that good enough is actually good enough. And they name their improvised rifles Frankenstein, which tells you everything you need to know about human psychology in one ridiculous detail. I would not change any of it. Well, maybe I would add sound dampening to the training facilities. Humans are remarkably loud when celebrating success, but other than that, perfect, in their own utterly insufferable, completely revolutionary way.